Happy Sunday, everybody. It's time for another Hog Hoops Report. That's Kevin McPherson. As always, I'm Jacob Morris. And Kevin, we got to talk about hoops as always. Teams back on campus. Classes start next week. And Arkansas starting that final gear up process finally for the 2024 season.
It's the inaugural John Calipari campaign in Arkansas. It seems like he made the announcement early April. A lot of recruiting stuff going on, roster building. Really cool Cal tweets on his watch. He really just puts things out, kind of randomly sometimes, but also it's not a fevered pitch, right? Things just kind of drip out, and so at some point, I'm hoping you and I and others, media, are invited into the building for at least a 30-minute window of practice per. That's really the tradition up there. And I'm told Calipari at Kentucky, if you were media, that they let them in some. So, that's one of the things at the top of my, my list here of what I'd like to see. I think the biggest thing is coming out of the summer, when he talked about a couple of weeks ago in his press conference, the fact that they really worked on individual development and they were trying to get guys uncomfortable. There was some competitive play, but it was mostly skill work, working on individual development and probably position groups. I think what I want now is to hopefully learn a lot more about how guys are responding when they start implementing their offense, their defense, situational basketball plays, out of bounds after timeout. We'll see how much information we actually get on that. How much more videos do we actually see moving forward? We saw a pretty good amount of limited summer practice videos after it was kind of a slow drip early, and then they started kind of cranking some of that stuff out. So a lot to really look forward to. I think the biggest thing, obviously, Jacob, when you're looking forward to a season, because it's football season still, but I've got that basketball mind and my gears are turning. I'm thinking, I know what these guys look like on paper. I've seen them play, but I haven't seen them play together. It's not just about that 30-minute window for us to come in. We're not going to see a lot, but it's the idea of that excitement level of there's so many good players here. There's so many potential draft picks in the next upcoming draft in June. But there's going to be a season before that. Again, it's Calipari's first, and I'm starting to think or imagine or maybe dream a little bit, how are these guys going to interact together on the court? What's the chemistry going to be like? Because there's a lot of guys individually I really, really like, and I think there's probably several players that you could look at and say, coming into it, there's at least two that should have some preseason national awards watch list attention, and then there's several others that you're thinking, whether it's the all SEC team, all defensive team, all freshman team. I mean, it's a spoil of riches up there, but you get to a point where you want to see it actually play out. And so we got a ways to go. I better calm down a little bit.
It's easy to get excited about it. I mean, we've been talking about it since April. We're ready to see it in action, right? But I think it's a great point because Cal did a great job kind of just deflecting questions about the team's identity, right? Towards the end of it, I asked him, hey, what's the thing you're most confident with this team? What's the thing you think this team needs to work on most? And he was nice about it, but he just said, that's not our focus right now. Like you said, it's been a lot of individual work. It'll be interesting to see what the identity of this team looks like. And obviously you can't know all of that until the season starts, but at least in the fall, it should start to come together a little bit more.
Yeah, they talked about establishing culture and the individual development, and there was some competition and getting guys out of their comfort zones. We mentioned that, but he put a tweet out just a few days ago about the return of everybody, and I've heard him say this before when he was the coach at Kentucky. Pay attention to, effectively, he's using the word, to sum it up in one word, it's be patient, or two words. But it's a process, and he goes, hopefully you'll enjoy the ride and see what we become, not what we start out as. And I think, anytime, especially in this day and age where you're basically starting a roster from scratch, there's some truth to that. But at the same time, expectations are going to be high. This will be a team, I think, ranked easily in the top 15 nationally. I say easily, in my opinion, should be in that 10 to 15 range and should be projected in now a 16-team SEC in the top 3 or 4. And we've seen some early stuff come out that kind of hits those targets. So, yeah, there'll be a level of patience because teams you expect them to get better. The last regime, that's what happened. We saw Arkansas have sometimes typically good non-conference runs because they didn't always play the toughest non-conference schedules, but rough starts in SEC play, and then they got it going. Calipari's teams. I can go back and name several of them that hit some rough patches and then got their momentum getting into March. They're he's not the only one. Arkansas is not immune from that. We've seen it. In fact, in football and basketball, it seems like in SEC play, Arkansas gets out kind of slow, and in some of their best seasons, they finish really strong. So Calipari's no stranger to high levels of success, whether it's recruiting or league play or great runs in March. I know it's been a minute with the March part of it coming to Arkansas, but I just think, talk about patience a little bit. Yeah, you expect them to be better later than they are in the beginning, but I think the pieces are there. I think the pieces are there. If it comes together right, this group gels and plays for each other like he talks about, and he wants grinders out there. If they play that way and come together, this is a team that's got the makings of a final weekend. Not saying that that's what's going to happen, but in the last several years at Arkansas, now with Calipari, there's been a lot of success, and I think he's going to potentially move it even a little bit further, so that now we're really talking about what happened back when Eddie Sutton and Nolan Richardson were at Arkansas.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just a good reminder, like you're saying, he's preached patience, and there's going to be a game in the non-con slate. There might be a couple of games in the SEC slate, to your point, right, that don't go Arkansas's way, and you're going to see a avalanche of panic, right? This isn't working, and stuff of that sort. But it's a long season for a reason, and a lot of these guys haven't played together. They're going to have to figure some stuff out. I think you trust on the back end that talent's going to come through. But let's talk a little bit about the schedule. The SEC slate, we were talking a little bit before getting on here, finalized in terms of who Arkansas is going to play, but the physical schedule, we're thinking Monday, Tuesday, somewhere in that range. Arkansas is going to know what the SEC landscape looks like schedule-wise.
Yeah, I think so. CBS Sports' John Rothstein put out a tweet, I think, coming into the weekend saying, look, the SEC, as early as Tuesday the 20th, we could see the actual schedule. So we knew the matchups, but the game dates, you're always looking at how, do you have one of those swings where you're playing 3 games at home? Those road swings where you're playing tough teams back-to-back on the road. Who are the perceived teams that are going to be the strength of the SEC? I think it's going to be another deep, 7, 8 teams that are going to project into play tournament. So there's not, and then the rest of it, they're pretty darn good. The level of play is really high. So you're looking at the schedule for a lot of different things. But I can't wait to see it, because right off the top, being a guy that goes back to the old Southwest Conference days and being raised to hate Texas, it's not just a football thing. It was always a basketball thing. Any sport, baseball, when those programs met up, and a lot of great basketball players and matchups in the past, Arkansas gets a round robin, home and away, replaces Texas A&M as the permanent. I say permanent. Anytime the league expands, they change things up. But in theory, it's one of the 3 permanent home and away series, Missouri and LSU. So it replaced the Aggies, the A&M home and away on an annual basis. You'll still have teams that will rotate in, presumably at some point on some of that. But Texas, right out of the gates, home and away, and I want to see those playing dates. I can't wait to see them. Then I look at Kentucky. Arkansas is going to play it rough. That's a huge storyline. Arkansas gets Alabama, who is going to be preseason number 1 for some folks. I mean, they're that good. They're surefire top 4 nationally. Preseason number 1 probably for some. They're pretty much the easy pick to win the SEC. Arkansas gets Bama at home. Back on the road for Tennessee and Auburn. You're going to have good Florida and Georgia teams coming into Bud Walton Arena as well. I think Ole Miss is going to be strong under Chris Beard. I think he's recruited well. The Rebels, they're back in Fayetteville, Bud Walton Arena. We'll see about Missouri. That's the other home and away group. Last year, Missouri didn't win a league game under the first year of its new head coach. The previous year being an NCAA tournament team. There's been some interesting games there. And then LSU, McMahon's doing a really good job. I think he's doing a good job relative to what he was handed. We'll see about that, but that's the other home and away. But I can't wait to see the playing dates. Hopefully they also release the TV designations along with the actual game dates and times. Some of those are left up in the air as they figure things out a little bit later, but we should get the brunt of it once this is released.
Yeah, and specifically, obviously, everybody's going to point to that Kentucky game. I don't know how they missed, and that wasn't a home and home sort of situation. I mean, you would think they'd be rushing to do that, but I mean, that is going to be a national landmark game, and that place is going to be a hornet's nest when Cal walks in there, for better or for worse. We'll see how that game goes. But you make a great point. It's storylines galore because the SEC is going to be so deep, but you also talk about Texas coming back in. Oklahoma's become a fun game, right, in recent years between Arkansas, and obviously you have the close proximity there. There are so many matchups SEC-wise that are going to be a lot of fun, but also we're getting non-con schedule news as well, and I know you want to talk a little bit about that. Arkansas's got some marquee games, including a Thanksgiving clash. That'll be fun with some Thanksgiving food around 4 p.m. A lot of non-con stuff starting to come together for the Razorbacks as well.
The turkey throwdown is what they're calling it. Illinois in Kansas City. It's actually, let's be careful, it's 3 p.m. Central Standard Time for the kids that are here in the state or in the Central Standard Time Zone for that matter. But look, Arkansas, that's part of it. I've reported this over a month ago, actually. I broke this. It's part of a 4-team, multi-team event. When you look, it's Feast Week. When you look at those Feast Week tournaments, for example, where there's 3 games in 3 days, you know what the field is, but based on wins and losses, you're not exactly sure who you're going to play. Calipari does it differently. He kind of stays away from those as much as he can. And this is a multi-team event where Arkansas and Illinois get to host 2 mid-major teams as a lead-up to this game on their home court. So on November 22nd, 7 days prior to the matchup, Arkansas is going to play host to in-state Division I Little Rock. On the same date, November 22nd, Illinois is going to host Division I Maryland Eastern Shore. 3 days later, on Monday, November 25, Arkansas is going to host Maryland Eastern Shore at Bud Walton Arena. Both games, Little Rock, Maryland Eastern Shore at BWA. Illinois is going to host the Little Rock Trojans on that date. We move later in the week. Wednesday is when Little Rock's going to host Maryland Eastern Shore. They're not playing on Turkey Day. They're getting it over and out of the way on Wednesday. I don't know, why that is, but they're doing that Wednesday. And then Thursday, Thanksgiving Day, CBS is going to televise that. I believe it's coming on the heels, just following
afterwards.
Right after the NFL game. And so I think that might be a first, but it's a big deal. And you know that you're going to get that opponent. They're not just in the field. All you have to do is go back 2 years ago in the Hall of Fame Classic. Illinois was a ranked team, a 4-team tournament field in that Hall of Fame Classic in Kansas City, same place. But Cincinnati upset Illinois. Arkansas played Kansas State in the first round, so Arkansas got Cincinnati in the title game, won both of those games, but K-State and Cincinnati were not national needle movers in terms of, neither team was ranked. Neither team ended up being a postseason team. Probably, one of those situations with Calipari again. He wants to know that he's going to have that matchup solidified, and so I really like this. Again, it's not a tournament. It's simply and why these multi-team events, whether it is a tournament or what I just described, why they're important is you can have as many as 13 non-conference games. If you some teams only 11 because they're playing a 20 games conference schedule. In the case of Arkansas and the SEC, 18 league games, 13 non-conference. But those multi-team events allow you to get that extra game, so you can get to 13 non-conference. You'll still see a lot of teams that schedule, and they only go to 30 because they don't have a multi-team event for whatever reason set up. So they have to let go. They basically miss out on one game. Anyway, it's a lot of explanation for what that is. You mentioned it. It's one of the marquee games. There's a stretch of games that start with Arkansas versus Illinois and Kansas City. Then a few days later, December 3rd, at Miami, true road game in the ACC-SEC Challenge. Then December 10th, a week after that, you're in New York City at Madison Square Garden against Michigan in the Jimmy V Classic. So Arkansas is going to play in that stretch of basically 2 weeks. Arkansas is going to get 3 games against not only high major opponents, but all are away from home. 1 true road game sandwiched by 2 neutral site games. So, we're still waiting on. We've got now 10 matchups. But speaking of John Rothstein, he also put out that Arkansas is expected to host Pacific. The teams have never played each other. Division I school, West Coast school, obviously. During this upcoming season, he didn't offer a date, but my guess is it'll probably be a November game, probably an early November game. Now that I'm starting to see some of these dates line out, and I reported all those dates with that 4-team MTE, by the way, I think it was just yesterday on Twitter. So you're starting to see opportunities to schedule games early to mid-November as a lead up through the later part of the month. And I think with the 5 games in December, I think most of it's pretty much probably settled for December games. but it does leave the door cracked. Calipari's talked about a neutral site game in the regular season, potentially in Dallas, another home and away with a school, which would be either a home or a road game this year, and you return the vice versa the following year. So there's some other great, you could get Baylor again, another one of the top programs, in the Big 12. What about Arizona just joining the Big 12? That's not a full middle ground. It'd be easier for Arkansas fans to get to, but it's still, I think it'll probably would, in my opinion, Memphis is another one that's thrown around. That's, I don't know that if you're playing Memphis, why you wouldn't just do a home and away. And of course, Calipari used to coach there. And then again, the SEC, the way that it tweaks the conference setups, it may end up proving to be that only Missouri and LSU are the permanent home and aways, and they rotate where Texas is now. Because I'm with you, I think Arkansas and Kentucky should be a permanent home and away.
Yeah,
those are the top two. Those are the top two programs in the league. And historically, maybe not every year. Right now, Alabama's doing a pretty good job. Tennessee's strong. There's Auburn. There's always other, but historically and traditionally, it's those two. So that's what I'd like to see as well.
Yeah, sometimes it's as simple as just don't overthink this stuff, right? I mean, you can look for all these different reasons to make Arkansas and LSU, and you go down, it just Cal, Kentucky, Arkansas, Kentucky. Don't overthink it. Just make it happen. It was so silly when that came out to see it only played in one direction. I mean, it'll be one of the, I am confident in saying, I'm sure you feel the same way, it'll be one of the most watched college basketball games this year. And it'll be that year in and year out. I don't know why they wouldn't do it. It seems like such an obvious slam dunk.
Well, they're too busy thinking about football. I think the SEC home office's brain is overloaded with football, and it's a great basketball league. I understand. And look, Arkansas is a basketball school. Kentucky's a basketball school. If there are going to be fans that want to disagree with that, it's absolutely what it is. The state is built for feeding the basketball program, and it has. And it can be a national power every year if it's got the right guidance. And Kentucky's been that standard. Arkansas still, Calipari calls it a blue blood. If you're talking basketball scheduling, why would the powers that be not make the no-brainer move? I mean, to me, it's like it's right there. It's a gift in your lap that you just, you minimized it for whatever reason. I think it's silly.
I guess sometimes
I don't know what another word, silly, ridiculous.
Yeah, I guess sometimes things are too obvious, right? I mean, yeah, it's hopefully they make that change because it makes too much sense and it would be a lot of fun for both fan bases. But at least we'll get one this year. Arkansas and Kentucky and Rupp is going to be out of this world fun. But let's talk a little bit of recruiting. Arkansas back on campus. Coach Cal continuing the momentum and a lot of potential targets for Arkansas, continuing to try to build that 25 class.
Yeah, you look at Koa Pete, 6'8", combo forward out of Arizona, Gilbert, Arizona, national top 5 rated 5-star. You're going to hear that theme a lot in this. Has a visit scheduled Arkansas September 14th. Speaking of football, it's the Razorbacks' only game in September on the campus in Fayetteville, and it'll be against Alabama Birmingham. He'll be able to attend basketball practice. Keep an eye on him. I really think everything I'm gathering, including inside source information, is that he may favor staying closer to home. It might just be Arizona that's in the driver's seat there. I think Arkansas is right there at the top. I think they're right there with the Wildcats. So let's see if Calipari can push that Razorback logo to number 1. He's already done that with Darius Acuff Jr., another national top 5 rated 5-star. We know that out of Detroit IMG Academy, 6'3" point guard. Keep an eye on visits for Malik Thomas, Caleb Wilson, both top 10 rated 5-stars. Both of them hovering around top 5 or right there. Caleb Wilson, the 6'9" combo forward out of Atlanta. I've talked to him. He talks to Acuff. He told me he's going to definitely visit Arkansas in the fall during football weekend. We'll see if we don't have a date yet. Malik Thomas, it was thought maybe UConn bound. He canceled that Arkansas visit. But remember, he told me he was just postponing it. And that may end up being true. That was back in June. So let's see what he does. I mean, he's a guy that there's a lot of people thinking UConn's pushing all of its chips in the middle of the table of a very talented point guard, Caden Lewis, just a mega scorer who's really blowing up lately, just going nuts. And if that's the case, maybe Malik Thomas is really resetting things. He's going to take reportedly more than one visit. So we'll see if Arkansas gets a visit date there. Keep an eye on that. Class of 2025, in-state. Go to Springdale, right up the street from you there, Jacob, right now.
Yeah.
Isaiah Steele, 6'7" guard wing, can play the 1, 2, or 3, has an offer from Calipari. National top 50-ish 4-star rated guy. told me midweek he had just gotten off the phone with Chin Coleman, associate head coach at Arkansas, and they're talking about getting him in this month, later this month. So here's how it works. Arkansas gets back, right? We talked about that. Practice will start back. It's a dead period right now, August 6th to the 20th. So as of Wednesday, the 21st, this coming week, you're back to a quiet period where players can come onto campus. So 21st to the 31st. And then after that, once you get to September 4th, it will then be a full-blown recruiting period. And that's where coaches can go out, in-home visits, go to the schools, players can come on campus, coaches can go on their school camp. I mean, it's just, it's Katie bar the door. But right now, they're trying to get him in even before all of that, Isaiah Seeley. So we'll see if he does that. He just recently visited Ole Miss, said that went well. The same weekend that Koa Pete will be on campus, September 14th, Seeley's got a planned trip to St. Louis to visit St. Louis University. And things can change. So we'll see if they try to work him in, like he said, maybe later this month, or if it does push out into the fall. But there's other guys, obviously, 5-star guys Arkansas is pursuing. But right now, those are the names I'm paying the most attention to, because they've either scheduled or expressed strong interest to come visit Arkansas either in September or October.
Should be interesting to follow all of those guys. Let's stick with the in-state theme and talk 2026. I know you want to talk a little bit about J.J. Andrews, Little Rock, and a guy that Arkansas offered, I guess I should say re-offered, Cal offered, and a guy that Arkansas very much would like to have in the 26 class.
Yeah, I mean, he was already he's a top 15 rated player by ESPN, a 5-star in that class. 6'6" out of shoes, so he's got to be 6'7" in the shoes, and he plays in the shoes. But just physically gifted, athletic, strong. I mean, going into his junior season, this guy, I mean, when he was 14 years old, he looked like a college freshman. But he had just a great run on the Nike E16 circuit, led Brad Bill Elite to the program's first ever Peach Jam title in the last 4 games. So the round of 16, the quarterfinals, the semis, and the title game, he averaged 21 points and 8 rebounds per game. Had a couple of double-doubles in there. Had a great run in that title game, and especially the last minute or so, where he made several plays at both ends to flip a tie game into a 7-point win. But he followed that up in the last few days through the weekend at Dame Lillard's Formula Zero Elite Camp out in Phoenix. This is like 24 players. Half of it's some of the top high school players, a lot of them class of 2025, and then in the case of Andrews, class of 2026, and several of the biggest name incoming college freshmen from the 2024 class that have already been going through limited summer work at their schools. And JJ really showed well. I think he was one of 6 players to receive an award. He got the Pitbull Competitor Award, and it is a perfect description of how he plays. This is the most blue-collar, top 15 rated 5-star I've ever seen. At 6'6", he battles on the glass like he's a big man. He dives on the floor for loose balls. He plays the right way. He makes plays that impact winning. Jalen Williams back in the day at Arkansas, the big man, did all those little things on top of being just a high floor IQ guy. And sometimes the fact, well, he's not a high riser and he's not a true rim protector. Well, he took charges. He was a rim protector. He just invented a better way to do it, or a different way to do it. Because it's a turnover on that one. If you block a shot, it might go back to the other team. They lay it in. Anyway, J.J. Andrews is that kind of thinker on the floor, not the same position. I love him. I talked to an NBA scout who was one of the camp counselors today, and he told me, he goes, man, everybody loved him. He said the body, the athleticism, the energy. He said, man, he's really good. And he said, he pointed out, he remembered, he goes, yeah, I think he was one of the ones that got an award. I'm like, yeah, he was. And so J.J. Andrews, again, Calipari went and saw him multiple times in the spring and summer. He made the offer. He's the only class of 2026 in-state player to have an offer from Arkansas directly from Calipari. In fact, keep an eye on that. The last I checked in on that, he doesn't have visits scheduled. Let's see what he's able to work in. School will be starting, but there'll be opportunities. And even if it's not in the fall for football games, which it could be, keep an eye on it. Remember, his dad, All-American football player at Arkansas back in the day, and a Pro Bowler with the Eagles and all that. But if it's not football season, he'll get something. It'll be some basketball. But Arkansas, just keep an eye on Arkansas's where how things project with him, because he's going to. Everybody wants him now, and he's already got a nice high major offer list.
Yeah, absolutely. When you have a guy like that in your backyard with an Arkansas connection like that, it sure would be nice to see him make his way up to Fayetteville. He's just uber talented. I mean, even just from a highlight perspective, I mean, I know you've had a chance to watch him for a while now, but I mean, he stands out. He is athletic in every capacity and a motor that is just off the charts. He's nonstop, which is a pretty awesome quality to have.
Well, it's really weird because when you're young, especially, I mean, some of the older guys, some guys in the NBA still have these problems where you see a play evolve, and then what happens is someone goes into a motion to do something, and then everybody kind of stops and watches. He's not that guy. He never stops and watches. He's that 300-pound lineman in football that when the running back's 15 yards down the field, gets on his horse and chases and walks him down because maybe a D-back clips the guy and slows him down a little bit, and the big guy comes and finishes the play. I don't know. I don't care how talented or not untalented that guy is. He's going to make a roster just by effort. Okay, so I'm doing cross-training football and basketball a lot today. Sorry about that. The point is, he's that guy that never gives up on a play. He's constantly and when they gave him, I didn't even know there was a Pit Bull Competitor Award for any camp. But he's that guy. He's always that guy. He's always stands out to me. He's willing to do anything to flip a situation and help his team win. And like I said, he's always like if he drives in and puts a shot up, he automatically knows if it's going in or not. He's not watching, just hoping it goes in, and he goes and gets that thing, and then he makes sure it goes in. He's that guy.
Yeah, I love the pit bull descriptor because I think you hear that a lot, right? With I think the undersized point guard, right? The guy that'll press you 90 feet or whatever. But if you talk about a guy that's 6'6", in your words 6'7", with shoes on, with athleticism like that, and he's got a nonstop motor like that, it's scary and somebody that Arkansas would love to have, obviously. And I like the football analogy because you're playing to his dad, right? There you go. I mean, that's something the family could understand with the defensive lineman, no?
Yeah, his dad was an offensive lineman, so it was his job. But it's that defensive lineman, after he didn't win that war on the line of scrimmage, is still involved, engaged in the play. You see so many of those guys give up, their hands are on their hips, and they're watching the action go down the field. And so every once in a while, you see that one guy, you're like, yeah, I need him on my roster. If for no other reason, so other guys can see. It's the Rudy story, right? It goes back to the guy that never gives up, and damn it, he wants to be out there. But JJ's got five-star talent. I mean, that's legitimate. But again, you see a lot of five stars. The fun stuff is when the ball's in their hands. Sometimes they have to acclimate to playing off the ball when they get to the next level. Other things, less is more. A lot of those five-star guys, they have to start learning that stuff. And that there's other five stars now that are fighting for the same spot they have, maybe, especially at Arkansas under Calipari. That's going to be a thing. JJ's unfazed by all that. He just goes and outworks everybody, and he's got really, really nice goodies in the bag. To play a game at a high level. So, look out. This is the next guy, one of the next. I mean, there's really great talent here year in and year out, but he's one of those guys that may be just a notch on that special category because of some of that stuff that you might call intangibles. I think you go and work like that, you make them tangible. You make people notice that consistently, and now it's part of who you are.
Absolutely. Well, that's a Recruitment Hog fans. We'll have to follow and we'll want to follow. I know you'll have all the details. You've talked to him a fair amount, and we appreciate that as always, Kevin. That's going to do it for this week's Hog Hoops Report. That's Kevin McPherson. I'm Jacob Morris. We'll talk to you next Sunday.